We joked about my wife at a backyard party, then she stood up and ended our marriage in front of everyone. My name's Carter. I'm 25, and my wife, let's call her Emily, is also 25. We'd been married for 3 years, high school sweethearts from a small town outside of Denver. I never thought we'd end up here. Emily's always been the quiet type, book lover, introvert, always more comfortable with a movie at home than a crowded party. I, on the other hand, thrived on attention, hosting parties, making everyone laugh, being the fun guy. Emily let me be myself, never complained about my constant need to be out and about, even when she just wanted a quiet night in. But I pushed her limits without realizing it. Looking back, I can see how I took her for granted. She'd get up early to make my coffee, drop her plans when I was in a bad mood, always put my needs first. She was caring, gentle, the kind of partner everyone dreams of. And maybe that's why I started to see her as weak. I stopped appreciating the small things. When I told Emily I wanted to quit my job and be a stay-at-home husband, no kids, just vibes, she agreed, never hesitated. But I didn't keep up my end. I let the house get messy, didn't cook, didn't help. She'd come home from a long shift to a disaster, yet just smiled and got to work cleaning, making dinner, and asking how my day was. Somewhere along the way, I started resenting how easy she made my life. I wanted fire, not someone who'd say yes to everything. I started spending more nights out with friends, drifting further away from Emily. Worse, I started making jokes about her behind her back. My friends joined in, encouraging me, telling me I deserved someone more exciting. Their laughter made it easy to ignore the guilt. Emily kept trying, surprising me with little gifts, cooking special dinners, talking about our future. But I was already checked out, chasing attention from everyone but her. I even started flirting with other women. Emily noticed, but she just tried harder to win me back, thinking her love could fix what I'd broken. And that's how we ended up at that neighborhood party, with everyone laughing at my wife while she stood just a few feet away, pretending not to hear. As months went by, the gap between us only grew wider. The more Emily tried to hold on to me, the more I pulled away. Our friends started to mirror my attitude. If I dismissed Emily's opinions, so did they. If I rolled my eyes or ignored her, the group followed suit. Soon, even her last real friends were drifting off, telling her quietly that she deserved better. But Emily, always the peacemaker, just kept defending me. She'd say Carter's just stressed, or he's going through something, like she owed everyone an explanation. I didn't realize how much it was tearing her apart. Every time I joked about her, I'd catch a flicker of pain in her eyes, but she'd cover it with a smile and say she was glad I was happy. I started hanging out with a new group, people who told me I could do better, that I needed a woman who could keep up. Meanwhile, Emily buried herself in work, taking extra shifts, avoiding our group altogether. At home, she was quieter, more reserved, always stepping aside so I could have the spotlight. Looking back, it's brutal how obvious it was. Emily was fading, becoming a shadow in her own life, and I didn't care. I even started to enjoy the power, bragging to my friends about how my wife does everything for me or how she never says no. They'd laugh and say she was wrapped around my finger, fueled by booze and ego. I let myself believe I deserved it. There were moments I regret even now, like the night my friends came over for movies and drinks, and Emily made us dinner, then quietly slipped away so we could have daytime. After a few glasses of wine, the jokes turned mean about how Emily would do anything for me, how she was too soft, how I could ask her to do anything and she'd just smile and nod. I joined in, mocking her habits and quirks. I could see, through the doorway, that she'd heard. She didn't say a word about it the next morning, just kissed me on the forehead and told me she loved me before heading to work. If she was hurting, she hid it well. But I know now that every joke, every dismissal, was another crack in the foundation of our marriage. Emily was breaking, and I didn't care. I convinced myself she'd never leave, that she loved me too much to walk away. I had no idea how wrong I was. Things finally hit a breaking point the week before the block party. Emily and I got invited to a neighborhood barbecue, and as usual, she dove into helping grilling, making sure everyone had drinks, always smiling, always in the background. The conversation shifted to relationships, and I started showing off, bragging about how lucky I was to have a wife who did everything for me and never said no. My friends laughed, egging me on, making even crueler jokes about how whipped Emily was and how I had her trained. Emily was nearby, quietly listening. I saw her expression totally blank, almost like she'd checked out of her own body. But I was too wrapped up in being the center of attention to care. That night at home, Emily didn't say a word. She just went straight to bed, leaving me alone in the living room with my guilt, which I quickly buried. I honestly thought everything would blow over, as it always did. Emily would forgive me, and life would move on. But that barbecue was the final straw, though I didn't know it at the time. A week later came the big neighborhood party, one of those summer events where everyone shows up, eats too much, drinks too much, and gossips about everyone else. Emily was her usual self running the grill, handing out food, laughing at everyone's jokes. I, meanwhile, was with my friends, drink in hand, ready to perform for the crowd. The conversation drifted to marriages again, and once more, Emily became the punchline. I joked about how she never said no, how she always did whatever I wanted, and just for laughs how she seemed to lack a backbone. My friends piled on, making her out to be a joke. That's when I noticed the sudden silence. I turned and saw Emily standing there, pale and motionless, staring right at me. She walked up to our table, eyes fixed on mine, and in front of everyone, she said, "We need to talk." Before I could even react, she pulled me aside, her face cold and determined. She said she was done with being disrespected, done with me, done with all of it. She told me I wouldn't be coming back home, that my things would be on the porch. Then, without a second glance, she walked away. If you want to see how I tried to fix my life after this disaster, don't forget to like and subscribe. The why this part is still ahead. I just stood there, completely stunned, as Emily walked away from me and from our marriage without looking back. All our neighbors, all my so-called friends, just stared. I felt their eyes on me, their pity, their judgment. I rushed home, hoping to get there before Emily could actually throw my things out. But when I arrived, she was already packing up my stuff, methodically and with zero emotion. I tried everything, begging, crying, even promising I'd change. Emily didn't even look at me. She finished packing, put my bags on the porch, and when I refused to leave, she told me she'd call the police if I didn't go. I knew she meant it, so I left, walking down the street with what I could carry, tears running down my face, not even caring who saw. None of my friends reached out to help. They just watched from a distance, pretending not to see. The people I thought were my support system gone in an instant. I ended up calling my mom from a park, still in shock, barely able to explain what had happened. She picked me up and took me home, disappointed but quietly supportive. I moved back into my old room, feeling like a total failure. The next days were a blur. I kept calling and texting Emily, desperate for her to answer, but she never did. The silence was crushing. Every time I replayed what happened in my head, I realized just how badly I'd underestimated her and how little I'd appreciated what I had. Meanwhile, my friends completely disappeared. No texts, no calls, nothing. When I needed them most, they were just gone. That's when it hit me. These people weren't friends. They loved the party version of me, the guy who always had a joke, always had a drink in hand, but when real life hit, they vanished. I spent days in that fog, feeling angry at everyone, but mostly at myself. I tried posting online for advice, but all I got was hate and judgment. The truth was, I deserved every bit of it. I had pushed away the only person who truly cared about me. Now I was stuck living with my parents, broke, jobless, and alone. Emily, on the other hand, seemed to be moving on. She stopped replying altogether, and I started to wonder if maybe she was happier without me. It was a painful realization, but it forced me to finally look in the mirror and see who I'd become. Weeks turned into months. I tried reaching out to Emily, but she was truly done. We spoke only once, and she made it clear she wanted a divorce, and there was nothing left to discuss. The finality in her voice was like a punch to the gut. I thought for sure she'd come back, that she'd miss me, but I was wrong. She moved on with her life, and honestly, she looked happier than ever. My own world kept shrinking. Still jobless, I depended on my parents for everything. My mom eventually helped me land a low-paying job just to get me out of the house. It was humiliating but necessary. The old friend group gone, not one message, not a single check-in. When I heard through the grapevine that some of the same guys who used to mock Emily with me were now trying to get her attention, it stung. The irony was brutal. My friends who cheered me on to disrespect her were now desperate for her time, and she wanted nothing to do with any of them. At first, that just made me bitter, but after a while, I started to see things differently. I realized how much I'd let my insecurities run my life, how I needed validation from people who didn't actually care about me, and how I pushed away the one person who did. It's a bitter lesson, but one I can't ignore anymore. Therapy became my lifeline. It took time, but little by little, I started to see where everything went wrong, not just with Emily, but with myself. I learned that being the fun guy at a party means nothing if you're miserable when the music stops. I learned that real respect comes from how you treat people in private, not just how you perform in public. Emily and I finalized the divorce with barely any drama. She kept the house she'd owned it before we married anyway, and I walked away with almost nothing. There were no kids, so at least there was no fight about that. The hardest part was knowing that she really was better off without me, and that I might never get a chance to fix what I destroyed. For the first time in my life, I had to actually start over from the bottom, alone. The last update, I wish I could say there was some big redemption arc, but real life isn't a movie. I'm still living with my parents, still grinding away at a job I can barely stand, my friends. They're out of the picture, turns out. When the party's over, the ones left are the ones who really care. And I didn't have any. The loneliness is real, but it's honest. I've tried reaching out to Emily a few more times, but she's moved on for good. The last thing I heard, she seemed genuinely happy making new friends, living her life, finally putting herself first. Seeing that stings, but I know she deserves every bit of happiness. Meanwhile, I started therapy. I'm slowly piecing together why I acted the way I did, why I let my need for approval ruin the best thing I ever had. It's a long process, but for the first time, I actually want to change, not just say I will. The biggest punch in the gut, the same friends who laughed at my marriage are now chasing Emily, trying to get her attention. None of them ever cared about me. One old neighbor who used to be on the sidelines reached out, offered support, and was honestly the only one who showed real kindness. Life's weird like that. Now I'm focused on small steps, saving up, trying to get my own place, and rebuilding my self-respect from scratch. I don't want pity, and I don't want hate, just a real chance to become a better person, whatever that means. To anyone who's reading this and thinks they'll never lose what they have, you can. I learned the hard way. Cherish the ones who actually care, and don't wait until they're gone to realize what you've lost.